Today, I'm going to introduce you to an old friend of mine, Alexandra Kreis. We were in a yoga community together, and then we both left. When she left, she found her voice through devotional music. People told her to give it up, get a job, be realistic. But when the divine calls you, what do you do? Alex, what do you do?
What can you do? It's really, the stronger it becomes, the less you notice you can't do things differently. Because what you're wishing for, if you don't heed that call, is to go back to sleep, Natasha. Really,
Yeah,
we know entertainment is beautiful for a while, being entertained in life and all that, and seeing beautiful sunsets and going to the beaches, having a holiday and all that. And I'm not mocking holidays. I'm just saying when you're being called and when you hear what you need to do and you decide against it, which you can, it's always a choice. It's just a way of taking over responsibility for all your actions at that point. So I could have said, I'm going to take a job. I've been trained. I have a degree. I could go back to that and kind of do work there. But the thing is, it felt like I would take responsibility and go back to the small outcomes in life, instead of the ones that liberate you and bring you forward in life, in not only in self-development, but in really to grow back into your own shoes and reconnect with yourself.
completely agree. And when you get the calling, you can only ignore it for a while before everything starts to go downhill, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So let's let everyone know what you've been up to in the sense of you were a yoga teacher before. Do you remember the do you remember the changeover? Obviously you do.
Yeah, obviously I do. I think it has very much to do with the spiritual path. If you follow something that looks and has the qualities of a spiritual practice like yoga can have, and wanting to pursue that path, but then suddenly things kind of start falling apart, like first of all, my physique fell apart. I got injuries that I couldn't deal with at the time, and didn't want it to deal with. I thought yoga will solve it all. It will solve it all. Let me stay on this path. But in the end, because of my rigidity of what I kind of felt I needed to do to become, or be more in touch with the divine, let's call it that, or just kind of find my way back onto the divine path. I felt like that was the only solution. And the more I tried to stay on it, the more it broke apart. That's what really happened for me, and people had to play their roles. So there is no blaming whatever, but it's more the sense of the body told me don't do it anymore. The teacher told me eventually, what are you doing? The sense of the community around me was telling me in other ways the same. And because I was hanging on so tightly, I it took me a long time to really recover from it, to feel like that is okay. It doesn't mean the path is gone. It just means I didn't hear where I need to go next.
You made a very good point there is that because you held on and you were kind of ignoring the signs, it took you this probably the same amount of time to recover.
Exactly.
But then there was a period where you were still teaching and then you found this new path. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, that was a very funny moment. You're a singing teacher. You used to teach raga, and you taught me the first Saregama. I remember that quite fondly. And I was like, what is that? That is not singing to me. And I touched on upon music so many times in my life in kind of expressing myself through music, like dancing or playing an instrument. And so when I stopped, while I was still doing a little bit of yoga, I wanted to find a way of going back to singing. And I came across another way of kind of finding singing lessons. And the teacher told me, like, you're so off key most of the time, you need to get a harmonium. I was like, okay, fair point. So I got myself a harmonium. Well, I was trying an app first, and then I got myself a harmonium, and I was like, what am I going to do with that singing thing? I don't really want it. And so I was playing with the harmonium, scales up and down, and I had enough lessons in Drupat, not only through you, but also to Emilia Cooney, who lived in Berlin, and unfortunately she passed lately. But I knew that the teacher that I was with, he wasn't doing the right thing for me. And what I understood about that quality of singing and the harmonium wasn't really the things didn't add up, to be honest.
Yeah.
At one point, a friend of mine said, like, I'm going to these kirtan sessions and I love this song. Can you play that for me? And because I have training in different instruments, I said, like, okay, I can manage a few chords on that thing. And so we were we started singing kirtan. I was like, oh, this is brilliant. Something to support my voice. And I started singing, and it became more and more. I couldn't let go of that, researching all the songs that I found beautiful to play on the harmonium and sing along. And at one point, I don't even know how that came together. I sang a lot of prayers, like Sanskrit prayers, with a harmonium, and I decided to do an invocation at a retreat for people that were doing movement and Ayurvedic lifestyle with me at that point. And through that, somebody discovered me, my colleague who is now composing music with me, and he said, like, yeah, I think you should do more with that thing. I think you really should focus a little bit more. And that's how I found that vocation. And as it goes, it was the same for me. It's like, where the resistance is, there is the path. That's the funniest thing for me.
Yeah, that's true. So what,
Right.
did you resist it first?
Absolutely. I was like, I've let go of the yoga teaching, and I'm I'm kind of happy to do a little bit life coach teaching around Ayurvedic principles and yogic principles of leading your life. And I was like, but I'm not a singer, and I always mock it up. I'm just doing it for fun. And that was the same thing when I started teaching yoga. I was like, this is my thing, and I'm not really good at it, and why should I teach it?
Well, I mean, it's quite interesting because you were saying that first you weren't in key. And like, as you said, that I'm from the Indian art world, or at
Mm,
least I've studied the Indian arts. And if you look at the roots of Indian art forms, they are a way, and it's written that they are a way of communicating with the divine. Of course, you have the other side of the spectrum where it's fame and fortune, let's say. But there is also this middle ground of having that pure devotion, which really involves surrender, and having, the other end of the spectrum is perhaps even too technical, where it's like you might as well be listening to a computer. And it's like just finding that middle ground. That devotion is kind of like what I think is the communication to divine. Is that the same for you? And what does
yeah.
that
Yeah.
music mean? How do you do this devotion?
I totally agree that you can be on pitch singer. You can have flawless technique, which is adorable when you listen to it, honestly. But to give it the quality, the devotion needs to come in, and the devotion has come through me through all the bad times that I experienced
Mm.
in my life. Really, I mean, as you said, when you feel you make that choice to be responsible for how you move on in life, you think, or I think, it's better to have a paid job, which for some people is, but for me it wasn't. And if I would have gone down that path, I would have probably become smaller and smaller and not feel like I can express myself. Ultimately, we all seek to express ourselves if we are being honest. If we don't kind of swallow it down and hide it somewhere in our body. But then when it breaks open, when you realize you've been fooling yourself, it's not the prettiest process at times. And in that process of breaking open, as some people call it, some people feel you're breaking down, but some people say you're breaking open is the question, what was there before me? What was there before I took charge? What was there that kind of brought me here? And in that sense, that's where my devotion comes from. That's also fueled through a gateway, because I learned about this, what we call avatar in our language, that kind of incarnation of the divine in a human form. And Neem Karoli Baba, who lived in Kainchi in the until the late 70s or mid 70s, who is an avatar and is present to my right or to your left at this point. He kind of brought a lot of wisdom into the world through people like Ramdas, Krishna Das. Some people know that network. Be Here Now is the most famous book. And I noticed by addressing the divine through a person that is in itself a guru, not the way we use it so, how do you say, blatantly maybe, or in our language, we don't understand what guru really means, that kind of, which is heavy with darkness, heavy with knowledge, and heavy in itself because it has the truth in it. Is an easier pathway for me to make my devotion come to life, because I sing to him. It's to me, I sing to him.
Okay, so you're using him as the not vehicle, but like a murti. Like
Yep.
people use the murti as a condensed or a drop down version of the abstract, which is a little bit harder and less tangible to connect to. I see, yes. So what is it that you sing? I know that you sing the Hanuman Chalisa,
Yeah.
and is it just anything that you sing to him? It doesn't matter.
No, it's almost like a demand at this point. I've been told, I do it in the morning. So I know that arti means to do your prayers at sunrise, but I call it still my own arti. I do present the light and the incense to him and kind of offer him my respect and call him in. And as I play, I often start with Jaya Jagadish Hari, which is a prayer to Vishnu, who is in itself, making life happening. So I'm calling in life, and in that I'm being told what to sing next. What's probably, where do I need assistance? And it can be Lakshmi, Kali, Durga, Hanuman in himself, not only through the Chalisa. It can be also songs that evoke that sense of spirituality, maybe. There's lots of songs we love, that have come through a divine interplay, and we listen to them. I mean, if you listen to a few Beatles songs or so, that you can definitely hear that time, in, were they in Rishikesh, I think, right?
I think they were, yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't need to be for us abstract sound of Sanskrit words or whichever
No.
Indian dialect is being used. It can be a simple English song, so to speak. But the part of it that it comes through is that you feel the person felt that and experienced that.
Mm.
So that's what I'm trying to sing most of the time.
And how do you work with this idea of surrender? Because my idea of devotion or pure devotion is where the I has completely disappeared, and so that you can be this vehicle for the divine to actually express itself through you. And to do that, you have to surrender fully. And so, how do you see it, and what do you do to get into that space?
I think at this point, it's only a dance between me and, being the vehicle. So, as you say, I mean, I've been in bliss stages, you would call, where there was just me as the observer, but the observer can be active at any time. So if when I sing, I could have thoughts like, "Oh, this sounds beautiful today," "Oh, my voice finally works," or something like that. That's totally self-driven and sometimes really fun to watch. And then what happens is I get a slap, like I
Yeah.
misplay immediately or something like that. And then I kind of go back, okay, so who am I singing to here? What is the goal? What is the intention? And I think the surrender comes through the intention. And the surrender also has to do for me with understanding that nothing I do at any time is not being not witnessed. And nothing that I offer just in front of the, harmonium is just the thing that means surrender. But anything I do in life has to have that quality of, I understand it's not my doing. And that's the bigger task. And so in singing at times, because when the energy, I believe you have that understanding through your own practice, but when the energy moves in and you've called it long enough and often enough, it just moves through you, and then it's not me anymore. Then my voice changes. I don't even know where I get that voice from, so to speak. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what's happening.
I mean, I've seen that, just like from the days when I used to play the tanpura for the greats on stage, and they would for me, it was like you can see that they are no longer there. They are completely in communion with the divine. And sometimes with certain people, what they're doing is they are creating the field of consciousness for all the listeners to actually come and meet them there. It's just so beautiful, and it's beautiful to have that opportunity to do that for people like you're doing. It doesn't even have to be a teaching, does it? It's more a case of sharing.
It's more sharing. I think when you remove the teaching, even though you become a teacher for some people, like it's when you remove the teaching, then people can get a taste of that, a nectar, the taste of nectar, which is inciting. Is that what you say? It is so sweet that you want to have it. You want to know
Yeah.
why that person sounds so sweet to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's what like the power of the human voice has, that because sound, just for those who are interested, sound being the closest of the perceivable elements, that it's seen as a bridge between the manifest and the unmanifest. So the human voice especially is holding this life force. And that's why I think people are attracted. They don't even know why they're attracted to it. There's a sense and they can't put their finger on it. But as you said, they just want that. And, you said something earlier about your suffering. I mean, I was thinking earlier today, it's trauma, or it's overcoming certain traumas and also losing a lot that makes you have this quality,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you know? And then I was also thinking, like, because you have to sacrifice something to receive something else. So, what is it that you have had to sacrifice to be where you are, to have this big role of sharing your music?
I'm still sacrificing.
Yeah, well, yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
I'm still sacrificing. I still have to put that into the fire, as they say. I cannot help but think, and obviously I look at that sometimes when I look at yoga pictures, that the physical yoga practice made me vain, like because all I was experiencing was a neglect of how my body looked. I didn't like it. I got enough comments when I was younger to make me believe, you're not whatever beautiful, this is too big, this is too small, this is too, I don't know what you hear. And I'm not blaming people, but I think on the yoga path, one of my things, and being so connected with a really strong physical practice that gives you also a lovely body in the end, was that the loss of that and the concept around who I am allowed to be in this world, if I'm not that, if I'm not the woman in the splits, if I'm not the woman with the strong legs, and the one that can hold a breath forever. So breath retention was one of my specialities, and twists, and all that kind of things. And um I think that was one thing I had to sacrifice. The injury was so large that it kind of really had to make me sacrifice that practice in particular, to be honest. And another thing I had to sacrifice was friends. I had left from that time a lot of friends. The It didn't work anymore because I wasn't allowed in to hear certain information, and yeah, and how it goes. And then if you can't share really from the depth of your heart, then I feel that is very difficult in a friendship if you cannot be who you are. And what I sacrificed next was really actually my finances.
Mm,
Actually, I gave up all my everything I had.
mm,
Literally, I'm in the hands of God at this point, to move forward. And thank God I also am married, so there is somebody who helps me carry that weight. But that was a really big thing when I really gave away my last money
mm,
to experience something and get more healing in that. That was a very difficult step, which is in recovery, I have to say that, so
mm,
it's something I have digested, and it didn't make sense to a lot of people what I did at the time. And it doesn't have to make sense anymore to other people. It has to make sense to my own fulfillment. That was one thing. And the other thing, which I dearly loved, was, I've been my own boss for a very, very long time. I spent very little time in employment because, I was always fighting that sense of
mm.
somebody is telling me what to do. And I had to give that up
I
too.
hear
So
you.
I had to give that up too, but at least I'm talking to somebody who is on the same path, and I have to listen sometimes to his input, and that is something I gave up.
The thing is that all the things that you've given up are on a certain level, and the things that you get are on a finer level. And obviously, you wouldn't have given them up if the gifts that you're getting are not at least the same, but I'm sure more than what you gave up.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I never felt more alive than I do now.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all have our go-to feel-good things, coffee, wine, whatever it is, good food. And it's not against all that at all. But I noticed that at some difficult junctions that I'm still hitting, it's not a smooth ride exactly, but the difficult junctions don't allow me to fall back into these patterns of self-soothing, so to speak. I cannot go and watch endlessly TV anymore, or feel like, that bottle of wine is reserved for me, or it just doesn't taste anymore. That's the funny thing. And to navigate myself into that, experiencing life and seeing how valuable life is as such, like that I can sit outside in my garden and breathe, and that it's a warm day and I can witness that and feel that and still feel deeply troubled. That is a form of awakening that has come in all of that. Yeah, because for a long time I thought awakening or enlightenment would mean my way of paradise, like that sense of it'll be all so much easier. I understand the world. I understand
Mhm.
people. People come flooding to me, that kind of thing. But it's not. That sentence of you wake up and then you go chop wood and carry water, as they say, that is so true, because awakening means just being more real in life, and understanding more how to be more real. There's, for example, I thought I get rid of emotions of jealousy or emotions of anger and frustration, and you don't, you feel them even more, and they're even more painful because finally you don't put a filter in between.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I just came back from a Vipassana and we were talking about it recently.
yeah.
And, when I had this moment of opening where I saw so much, like in the next hour, everything was more challenging. And like I had to put it down to, I was just viewing more of what is always there, you know? So, as you said, those things don't go away, but the way that you look at them is probably what's important, the way that you observe them and
Mm.
see them as, well, for me, impulses. But it doesn't make it easier. how do you know the difference between your ego talking and the divine call?
Very difficult for people. Very difficult for people. You can only know it if you have a practice, Natasha, of listening to your heart. And how do you listen to your heart? I mean, and not the sense of a heart like, oh, I'm so in love with that other person, or and that sort of color, or I'd love to do that, but a connection into my heart means to hear the truth more clearly. My first experiences of that were very simple. They were like, it was late at night. I was on my bike and I was going through a red light. There was no traffic. And a policeman happened to be there on his motorbike, and he kind of passed me and stopped me and said, like, did you know what you did there? And I was like, yeah, okay. He got me. I really kind of felt he got me, and there was nothing much I could say here. But I got so frustrated and furious and said, like, it's in the middle of the night. I really want to go to bed and I really want to do, I'm really sorry. And I know you're right. I shouldn't have done that. And he let me go because he could feel that I did that not out of a place where I felt like it was safer for me to travel through that light and quickly get home than kind of stand and wait in the middle of nowhere where there's no traffic. And this might sound bizarre to people. What is truth about that? And I said, that's what I mean. Truth is not always just beautiful, like to have like these pearls of wisdom we hear through Kabir and Rumi, to say these kind of poets. But truth can be just the true connection into, wow, this is what I'm experiencing and this is what I need to express. So, for example, when you don't know whether it's your conditioning or whether it's your truth speaking, then you should always check whether it's coming from the top or from the center. So does how you answer the question you're asking yourself at that point in time, does it come from a reasoning, from logic, from where, or does it come from a place inside of you? If you still don't know, maybe you start praying. And that's what I do with what I said earlier with the singing. It's a part of me to lock deeper into listening more intently. That's what I use the practice for, so to speak. If the channel is a little bit dusty at times, throughout the day we lose it. And then what do? You have to clean the dust off that channel of communication because the conditioning comes in so strongly.
I mean, also we have codes of conduct, like obviously not hurting anybody, ulterior motives out the window. If it's personal gain, then there's a big question mark whether it's ego or, the divine speaking to you. There's no personal gain in that.
Mm,
But I'm still going to ask you the question again.
mm.
When did you know? When did the call come that you were to follow this path?
I don't think there might have been a call when I was 7. I keep remembering this scenario. My parents and grandparents are religious, and most of the time we spend our spare time in religious kind of centers and whatever. I remember so well because my grandmother, she was much older and she would go to her coffee and tea afternoon, taking me along into that center. And they would play music, of course, and then I would be standing there and dancing because that was the only way I felt connected to myself and the only way I felt like how I can experience the beauty that I'm surrounded with, and it wasn't because I thought all the old people were beautiful, but it was just, I think it was a feeling for me. And then later on, like I kept singing in choirs, in church choirs. And I don't know. So Natasha, what I think, if you want to put the finger towards that point, it's only pointing at something that was long, long there before, and something, it was me, planted that seed, or something in myself that was planted through whatever, maybe a life before that, or whatever I've been gifted with on this path, had that seed in me already. And the music, and why I chose the music, or why the music chose me, is so bizarre to myself. I cannot tell. You can ask me many more times and I can come up with many more questions.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I suppose what I'm trying to get at is, in retrospect, you see that you had a calling, but you
Hmm.
didn't, you kind of ignored it until the time was right. And then life felt right, like it was never right before, maybe. Or I think for those who are listening, if they have a calling and they're not sure, what would you say to them?
You can only try. And in
Yeah.
trying, you will only find your answers. Stop trying to make it out from your head. Is this what I need to do? And you need a lot of courage in this. If you're not made out for courage, you're not made out for this path. I'm sorry, really. A lot of people romanticize spiritual life these days through, the watered down version of whatever we can see in spiritual practices. But I think if you're not willing to live with the consequences of your choices, you won't find out. That's what I want to say. I know it sounds disheartening, to be honest, to be saying that, but I mean it in the best way. You only have this life.
Mm.
So what do you want to spend it with? If in my family and in closer circle of friends, we had messages that were shaking us to the core and which kind of remind you of the how close we live to death, really, somebody who walks along with us all the time. We keep forgetting. And when we remember that, we know how valuable our time is and what we want to spend it with, really. So sometimes that can be enough to wake you up to say, like, okay, I'm going to try this.
Yeah, you're right. We only have one life, and it's now. You've also shared that people around you have encouraged you to take a more regular path. I mean, how do you deal with that pressure? It's quite a lot of pressure.
Okay, if I want to have that conversation with somebody, it's probably someone that is dear to me. Let's say my parents or my partner, um, my husband. Um, if I have to have that conversation, I can only trust that they have an understanding of that they want to see me thriving in life. We would say happy in life. That the reason why they're asking me is because they don't feel safe in the path I'm pursuing, and it might impact their lives
Mm.
in how I'm pursuing it, because they support me and they know feel they are the ones who have to catch me. And in physical terms, sometimes that might be that, but I can only use my reasoning from the deepest of my heart in that sense to make them see that this is my choice. It's still my choice. And if they end up not supporting me, that would be hurtful, but it's still my life and my choice. I mean, I've been a little bit like that,
Hmm.
been a little bit like I do what I need to do for myself. And some friends called me like a life artist or something, but I don't know whether that exists in English.
What is it in German?
So,
Okay.
to be an artist of life, or in life, without you being, a specific whatever painter, musician, or whatever. But I
Mm.
always seem to come out with new perspectives on life, not the, regular ones, the black and white ones we have. So, and just to play with life. So, that's how I deal with that. And other people who say that to me, I couldn't be bothered less,
Yeah.
if somebody says, like a neighbor who just makes a remarking comment of, why don't you go back if you're in dire straits or whatever, and say like, okay, yeah, because that would be easy for you. I'm off your hands, but it's not what I need to do.
There are a lot of people on the set. I've had other friends who they've been offered money from relatives and said, look, we'll give you this money if you go and get, a proper job. And they were like, well, you just don't get it. And no, thank you. I don't want that money then. So there is something that's shifting in the idea of what we should be doing with our lives, you know? And there's something about this path where you can't know the next step. That's what I think the scary bit can be, is that you can't plan. There is just no possibility of planning, because whatever you plan, you've realized and you've seen over time is that if you plan, that plan is going to be completely thrown out of the window for you. So you just go, well, what's the point? I better just wait and see what the next step is.
Absolutely. You said that earlier to me, and I thought, like, yeah, well, I don't want to be cast as a musician now. I'm making music, I'm singing my prayers, as they say. Um, and I don't know what's going to happen. If the divine asks me to do something else, I will do something else. And that sounds to some people like, okay, so you're just doing what you want to do. I think you can't explain it with outer words. It's just like what needs to be done will be done. And I need to be the person that it comes through. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that everything that has to be expressed comes not necessarily in the same package, i.e., sometimes it's going to be through singing, sometimes it's going to be through dance, sometimes it's going to be for me like through writing. And it chooses the way that it's going to be put down. So I
Exactly.
think what you said is right. What did you say? What's that German word?
The sort of
The
like,
artist, the life.
Lebenskünstlerin. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Lebenskünstlerin.
I
Yeah.
like that. And
Mm-hmm.
now also you said when we were chatting last week, you were saying that you like to call yourself the secretary for the divine. I mean, can you unpack that a little bit for me?
Yeah, at this point, like before I was whatever I studied, and I had a title and I had a diploma and whatever, a master in that. And so you can say, I'm this, and then I became a yoga teacher. And at the time, not many people kind of believed in that. And so that was already a little bit woo woo. What are you? So I said, I'm a teacher, and
Yeah.
then you become a yoga teacher and then you become a life coach and now you Veda coach, I became this and this and that. And then I thought, like, so what am I now? I'm an artist, yeah. But what am I really? I'm listening to the divine and I get constantly, told what to do next. So that's what I mean as a secretary, like at the end of the day, it goes back to what I tried to explain earlier. When you get a more inner understanding, a sense of that everything needs to be done through you, because how has God hands? Like it becomes that sense of, it's a reminder to myself that it's not me I'm doing that. I'm kind of removing what you said earlier, the ego out of the thing, as soon as I say like, oh, this is going well for me, like
Mm, mm,
suddenly it's
mm.
not going well for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm thinking as a secretary, like a secretary helps, and assists in projects to uh, come to this world, into this world. Yeah.
Well, Alex, I mean, you are someone who is hopefully supporting just by doing what you're doing and being truthful to yourself. You are supporting those who would like to do the same. Are you doing anything soon?
A Lakshmi retreat, Lakshmi and the joy of being, exactly, finding the essence of yourself, what comes out as truth in you, and to pair it with music, so to speak. We invoking Lakshmi through music and through other chants. And yeah, that's what I'm going to do in this May in Croatia.
How do you feel about offering a piece of your music for our listeners?
Yeah, I'd like to. That's a very nice way of finishing this, I think. For people can listen to this song, which I call The Long Way Home. And it very much has to do with what we talked about, because I was taking a long time, until I found my way into music. So I hope everybody enjoys it.
Stay tuned because it's going to play directly after this. Thank you for tuning in. If you do have any reflections or questions, please stick them in the comment. I'm sure Alexandra Kreis will be happy to answer them for you. So will I.
Indeed. Thanks, Natasha.
Thanks, Alex.